how do you put the Black Panther, the noble King of Wakanda, and Deadpool, the merc with the mouth, in the same room and expect them to work together? The writers of this series of comics did just that, and this story is the result. But did this gamble work? Stick around to see for yourselves. The story starts in Wakanda on the Night of the Dead, but it's not what you're thinking. Wakanda celebrates it every year like the Americans celebrate Halloween. So T'Challa and his sister Shuri go out at night in Wakanda's own version of trick-or-treating. T'Challa spots a little girl dressed as a Black Panther and starts up a conversation with her. So he hands her a special chocolate bar, but instead of jumping for joy, she starts to cry and says she has nothing to give him in return. So T'Challa consoles her. Back in New York, Deadpool was doing the exact opposite. He is recklessly driving a school bus full of children in pursuit of a villain character named the Wrecker, whose powers come from a crowbar. Deadpool would go on to confiscate the same crowbar, and, spoiler alert, it will come in handy later in the story. Now, let's just say the kids are crying out in fear. So Deadpool sees his chance and jumps out of the bus with a thermite grenade in hand. He lands on the wrecking ball, and the grenade burns off the wrecking ball chain, which ends up on top of the crane cabin. So the Wrecker's rampage has been stopped, and the school bus subsequently crashes into a building, sending shards of glass everywhere. One of those shards impales Willie Lumpkin, who is the beloved mailman of the Fantastic Four. Willie ends up in the hospital, and upon visiting him, Deadpool swears he would do anything to save his life. The doctor says he can only live if he undergoes an experimental surgical procedure patented by Tony Stark for cases like this, where shrapnel is lodged close to the heart. The doctor also says they would need a little vibranium to do it, so we readily see where this is going. Deadpool is on a collision course with the Black Panther. Back in Wakanda, T'Challa is putting the finishing touches on his latest invention. It's a laser meant for precise surgical procedures that cuts and heals at the same time using what is known as nanites. T'Challa calls them star cells, and that's quite a corny name. Just then, Deadpool makes an appearance and leaves T'Challa wondering how Deadpool beat the defenses surrounding Wakanda. Deadpool gives some crazy answers about how he dressed up in elephant pajamas. So Deadpool makes his request and asks T'Challa to give him some vibranium the size of a bullet. As anticipated, T'Challa turns down the request. But rather than explain himself a little bit further, Deadpool gets into fight mode. If only he could tell T'Challa that he needs it to save the life of Willie the Mailman. Perhaps T'Challa would see reason. Instead, Deadpool starts to threaten T'Challa in that half-serious tone of his. Then Deadpool attacks but is thrown at a wall, making a reasonable dent in it. Deadpool tries to get back, but T'Challa has had enough and shoots Deadpool with his new laser star cell blaster. This cuts off Deadpool's hand cleanly. And here's the thing, rather than regeneratively growing a new arm as expected, nothing happens. So what's it about this new tech that stops Deadpool's arm from growing back? That's a scientific inquiry for another day. But right now, T'Challa uses one of Deadpool's teleportation devices against him, and so Deadpool ends up on the outskirts of Wakanda. Suffice it to say, that was more than a small misunderstanding. Back at the lab in Wakanda, T'Challa then studied Deadpool's dismembered arm for research purposes. He eventually realized that Deadpool's regenerative powers came from his cancer, not the other way around. Thus, his arm didn't regrow when it came in contact with the star cells, which were programmed to heal. Essentially, the cells healed the cancer and prevented it from triggering a regrowth. It was a eureka moment for T'Challa. But out there in the African wilderness, Deadpool was determined to get back into Wakanda, and so he made a deal with some poachers to purchase their jeep in exchange for some black market cryptocurrency. At this point, Deadpool was still without an arm, so he cut off the head of a zebra, which was one of the poachers' prize acquisitions. Then he attached the zebra head where his arm was meant to be. Afterwards, Deadpool drove into Wakanda and crashed through the palace. Deadpool engaged Black Panther in combat, but it turns out it was only a hologram. The real Black Panther snuck behind Deadpool and gave him a knock on the head. Afterwards, T'Challa decides he will help Deadpool reattach his real arm on the condition that Deadpool leave Wakanda and never return. And while T'Challa consults with his mother, the Queen, about his new invention and how it has the potential to heal and perpetuate his life, and by extension, his rulership, he gets alerted to some danger. Just then, Okoye, who is one of T'Challa's top guards, interrupts them. She reports that an unidentified plane had just flown over the Wakanda airspace and blown up. The culprit was a character named Jack-O-Lantern. Apparently, he had a flaming pumpkin for a head and was notorious for throwing pumpkin bombs at his enemies. Jack-O-Lantern attacked Wakanda to fish out Deadpool. Deadpool is, in fact, the reason Jack-O-Lantern took up villainy in the first place. So Deadpool hitches a ride in T'Challa's ship, and they both hurry to the outskirts. Long story short, Jack has set a farm of endangered species on fire, and in the process, gotten the attention of Black Panther and Deadpool. He is able to drive a sickle through Deadpool's top skull, and then he turns to Black Panther. But Deadpool heals and is able to strike him down from behind. Afterwards, Deadpool shoots him dead against the wishes of T'Challa, and worse still, it was done in full view of a Wakanda child. T'Challa is so angry that he decapitates Deadpool, so they both make the trip back with Deadpool's dismembered head chattering away. Both the Black Panther and Deadpool have no sooner become wary of collaborating some more. For starters, once they got back to the palace, T'Challa reattached the head while Deadpool was still strapped. Deadpool then set off a Deadman switch that triggered an explosion. This was so he could escape, and the Black Panther pulled himself out of the rubble and pursued Deadpool down the corridor. But Deadpool activated his teleportation device, and he ended up in the Wakanda armory. Deadpool looked around and thought he liked one particular Black Panther suit, which he tried on. Once T'Challa arrived on the scene, he used the Star Cell blaster, but the suit Deadpool was wearing absorbed the energy and gave it back. The only other option for T'Challa was to engage in a claw fight. After a while of fighting, Deadpool got tired and activated his teleportation device yet again. And this time, he hit a jackpot because he ended up inside an actual Wakanda vibranium mine. This is exactly what Deadpool was asking for all along, a little piece of metal to help Willie the Mailman. So Deadpool pulls out the crowbar, and it's not just any crowbar, it's the same magical crowbar he obtained from the Wrecker earlier in the story. And remember, we're dealing with vibranium here, with its highly resonating frequency. So when Deadpool hit a little bit of it with the crowbar, the entire mine started vibrating. Add to that Deadpool's malfunctioning teleportation device, and here's what you get. The entire mountain with all the vibranium inside was transported all the way to Paramus, New Jersey. Deadpool even put up a sign urging anyone who was interested to buy a pound of vibranium for $1 million. Just then, T'Challa arrived to take back his mountain of vibranium. The Black Panther was so angry that he threw a Deadpool into oncoming traffic. Back in Wakanda, Shuri was hacking the Black Panther suit Deadpool was wearing. Soon enough, she was able to remotely take off the suit, and so T'Challa attacked Deadpool for the enchanted crowbar and his teleportation device. But Deadpool would rather play difficult and dared to fight back, even if it was only for the sake of it. The epic battle was on, and both combatants charged at each other, knocking themselves off the highway and into a cemetery. A few boastful and taunting words were exchanged. However, T'Challa's words were more biting and caused Deadpool to pause and reflect for a moment. Deadpool became self-conscious for the first time in his life, but surprise, surprise, it was revealed that all along the Black Panther had only been yet another hologram. Deadpool started soliloquizing and T'Challa was paying attention. Deadpool wanted to know if he was really a bad person. Whatever the case, he started to regret all the crazy things he had done, and he acknowledged that his soul was the one thing that couldn't regenerate. So T'Challa observed right there that Deadpool had a heart after all, and wasn't trying to save Willie the Mailman on a whim. So T'Challa made his new Star Cell technology available to be used by Willie's doctors back at the hospital. And it was the miracle cure Willie needed. Afterwards, the Black Panther decided it was time to leave, and we trust Deadpool to leave a parting shot. He cracked some sort of joke about the Avengers, and as T'Challa boarded his craft and prepared to fly away, he finally got it and laughed out loud. Down below, Deadpool raised his hands in triumph and declared himself a winner. On his part, T'Challa genuinely hoped they would never see each other again. And if you were T'Challa or the Black Panther, you'd think the same. Deadpool is such an unpredictable character, and you can never say for sure what his motivations are. So T'Challa fell for the notion that Deadpool was unstable and perhaps a little cuckoo, so he could not be trusted with a little vibranium. You can't blame T'Challa for acting the way he did, and we bet none of us ought to be as patient with a character like Deadpool. So do you think T'Challa handled things well if, for instance, he were Chadwick Boseman? Leave your comments below as well as your condolences. See you in the next one, and bye.